Hi, everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Peak Blockchain podcast. My name is Garvit, and I will be the host for today's podcast. In this podcast, we will try and explore the role of blockchain technology in the cybersecurity world and how can blockchain sort of transform the overall data security for organizations across the globe. Because data security is something which is of great importance for pretty much every organization out there, and precisely why many organizations are investing heavily in order to enhance their data security. Right. So we'll delve into all these aspects and learn all the pros and cons of blockchain technology in today's podcast. And to discuss all of that, today I have Max on our podcast, who is a very knowledgeable and a really interesting personality. He is one of the founders and the chief operating officer of Digital Nomad Lab. Also, he holds a substantial leadership experience of more than 20 years in the IT sector. Not only that, he's an amazing and a certified blockchain consultant as well. Moreover, he has been a part of many blockchain events across the globe, including the BlockTech Summit, where he recently spoke on blockchain and technology innovation. So that is the kind of personality that I have with me today on our podcast. So without further ado, I would like to warmly welcome Max on our podcast. Thank you so much, Max, for joining today and sparing a valuable time.
Hi, Gavit. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thanks for joining this call as well, because it's an honor for me as well to be able to host you and interact with you on our podcast. So let's kick off our conversation today. And to start off, I'm sure there will be a lot of people who would want to know a little bit more about you, especially about your journey and your experiences, perhaps some challenges that you might have faced along the way, right? So why don't you start off by sharing some thoughts around all these aspects and how you started off in the blockchain space?
Yeah, sure, Gavit. Actually, no one actually planned to be a blockchain expert or engineer. I think it's a very new thing. So my experience is that I started out my career in the IT, right? Actually, in the supply chain sector, working in the warehouse environment. So we actually plan and deploy enterprise solutions to run supply chains more effectively, right? Especially in the area of warehousing, transportation, freight management, e-procurement. So that was my background, and along the way, I actually focus on the system analysis part of it. Things came to 2016 where it was getting a little bit interesting, and I went for an MIT course, actually talking about future commerce. So in that particular course, they discuss heavily on blockchain and about the Bitcoin, right? So during that time, there was also a year leading to the Bitcoin halving, and a lot of people, even after the course, we watched the price of Bitcoin going from 3,000, 6,000, 8,000. And if you remember at the end of 2017, Bitcoin actually reached a high of 20,000 USD, right? And then, of course, we know what happened. Winter came in and the price of the coin dropped significantly. But that actually attracted a lot of interest, including myself, to really see, is this some kind of magic money, right? If you put it crudely, or is it some real use case behind it? So the more I read about the technology and the use cases, the more I'm convinced that it is something that would create a lot of new possibilities, all right, paradigms. You can say in different areas, banking and finance, especially supply chain management, retail, ownership, right, luxury goods. So you name it. There's a lot of possible use cases, right? So along the way, I also met some very good people, right? I'm pretty happy to say that I have actually met Benny, right, from Singapore, who is now serving as our chief technology officer, and also Nabil from London, all right, who is serving as our chief marketing officer. So together we formed this startup, Digital Nomad Labs, that focus on the B2B applications. How do we use blockchain for the enterprise and companies, right, looking for some real valid use cases? We are not so interested in serving, the just for the fundraising part of it, but we are building real solutions to power the enterprise so that they can go into the next decade of technology using this amazing blockchain technology. So that's in short what we do.
Absolutely. And since you sort of touched upon a few aspects about your about your organization, right? So let's talk about Digital Nomad Labs, right? Let's discuss the vision of the company and what was the idea behind starting Digital Nomad Labs, and also if you would like to share some interesting projects or use cases that you guys are currently working on, so that our viewers can get some more clarity about Digital Nomad Labs.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Gavit. So, Digital Nomad Labs actually started with this very simple observation. If you ask people what is blockchain, I think half of the people on the road that you meet would not be able to give an answer, right? And the idea of a distributed ledger technology, right, that's based on a consensus algorithm, right, with a incentive. So that is actually something very complex. What our mission is to simplify the blockchain and provide tools and technologies. If I may give you an analogy, right? Remember, many decades ago, there was a gold rush in California, right? So a lot of young Americans were rushing to California to mine the gold, right? But what really will successful ventures coming out from that era was that the companies that provide the shovels and the spades for those people to dig gold, right, were actually more sustainable and more successful rather than the individuals trying to mine the gold. So we are trying to be that particular, supplier of shovels and spades, so that companies can actually build their solutions or use our products, so that they can go into blockchain, especially addressing areas like scalability and security. Right. So that is actually our mission, and I would say that so far we have some very interesting projects on the way. One is actually in US and one is in UK. Gavit, can I ask, do you actually watch football, English Premier League?
Yeah, definitely. And
in EPL?
I follow
because cricket is a big thing in India.
Manchester United as well. No, I am more focused towards football, and I follow EPL very fondly. And Arsenal and Manchester United are one of the few clubs that I follow. Manchester United because of Ronaldo, and Arsenal is my boyhood favorite club. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. It's a big thing in Singapore, all right, in Southeast Asia, especially EPL. So Nabil, who is in London, all right, our CMO, is actually heading a project on NFT, non-fungible token, right?
Yeah.
And actually that is very interesting because what Nabil and the team there is trying to do is to work with a particular EPL team, right? And looking at ways of using the non-fungible token, right, as a way for community building and online ticketing, right? They want to engage their fans and supporters in a more collaborative and close manner, right? So there will be different strategies or different price tiers, and depending on your engagement, you may actually get a chance to perhaps receive podcasts or updates about this football team, or if you are belonging to the VIP segment, you can actually go and attend maybe a monthly gathering, right, with the captain of the football team. So that's the use case for the NFT in that particular area, which is actually much better than just pure digital art where people sell on open seas, right, without a parent use case behind it. In the US, we have another very interesting work that is for FairRide, which is actually a US-based ride-hailing app, right? I'm sure in India you know Ola, right, and also Uber. Yeah. So in this ride-hailing app, what happened is that we found out a lot of these drivers, they are known as independent contractors. They are not really full-time employees. They do not have benefits. So after working in a ride-hailing business for 5, 10, 20 years, what do they have to show for? There's no pension scheme for them, right? So what we, Digital Nomad Labs, work with FairRide is that we would power the tokens to be used as a loyalty rewards-based system so that the drivers and the passengers receive these tokens after every ride, right? And hopefully the tokens appreciate in value, just like Bitcoin. And after many years of driving for this ride-hailing business, the drivers actually have a stockpile of tokens that hopefully appreciate in value, and that serve as kind of their pension fund, right? If you will. So these are the very real use cases where we build the tokens on the Solana blockchain, right, which is one of the key layer one protocol out there. And this is something that the business, hopefully it can be launched somewhere by the end of this year or next year.
Yeah, so absolutely, listening to you about talking about all these aspects was so interesting, and I just wanted you to just go on, and I just wanted to learn more about your company. But the way you've explained everything with so much clarity and with so much detail, I'm sure our viewers would now have a better clarity about Digital Nomad Labs and the initiatives, especially the initiatives pertaining to the Ola and the cab drivers and preparing some kind of tokens for the passengers and the driver as well. So it's a great and a unique kind of an initiative by Digital Nomad Lab. So that is really amazing. And also when you touched upon NFT, right? Because NFT is something which has already seen a rapid growth over the years, and once this metaverse thing is up and running, I guess the growth of NFT will again we'll see a rapid growth in the next few years as well. Because I was reading some articles, published by many top-notch MNCs. They have also predicted the growth of NFT in the next 5 to 10 years, based on the fact that metaverse thing is going to be, in like it will be something that would be more prominent, and that will be the next big thing, right? So NFT, the role of NFT in metaverse would also be a crucial role, and of course, cryptocurrencies would also play a big role, right? So yeah, it was lovely sort of knowing all these aspects about Digital Nomad Labs, right? Now, since we were talking about blockchain and cryptocurrency earlier, and there is a misconception about cryptocurrency and blockchain because people see these two terms as one, which is quite incorrect, because cryptocurrency is one of the use cases of blockchain, right? So there are still many people who have this perspective that these two terms are one. So what are your thoughts on this?
Gavit, you raised a very pertinent point. Yes, many people still mix up the two concepts, and you're absolutely right. Actually, Bitcoin is the first and probably the most well-known implementation of blockchain, right? A blockchain itself can be used in a lot of other scenarios, right? Not necessarily involving any cryptocurrencies, but the cryptocurrencies will have to involve some form of blockchain technology, right? Building on it as a foundation. So if I may actually say, what is actually this blockchain? Actually, this is a kind of what we call DLT, right? Distributed ledger technology. And it's a form of recording transactions, where you have money coming in, how much money is there, money going out, right? Who is transferring to who is receiving what. And in the past, it used to be the case where you have a centralized manner, which are provided by the banks, the financial institutions. But the issue is that when there is a financial institution, right, you know that taking money to transfer takes time, and there is actually certain remittance costs, right? So I remember a few years back, there was a World Bank study, right? Believe it or not, the whole remittance flow of immigrant workers, right, who are working in developed countries, sending money back to their home countries, right, amounted to more than $600 billion, right?
Yeah,
And if let's say that friction during then, you have a lot of pretty high remittance costs, right? So what this blockchain enables is that, hey guys, look, is it possible for us to have a way where, let's say, I, Max, can transact with Gavit directly without the use of a central authority, and we do not need a bank, right? I can send some value to you. So that was actually a challenge for many years, because when we talk about internet, right, in the traditional sense, internet was a transfer of information and data. It was not really a transfer of value, right? And until from Web 2.0, which is another big topic, coming into Web 3.0, Web 2.0 companies like Google, Facebook, they actually capture a lot of value by having your data. But Web 3.0 actually allows, let's say, digital artists, right, or digital asset owners to transfer value over the web without any interference or central authority. So that is actually the main use case for blockchain, where let's say I can transfer value to you, and there's no friction in between, or very minimum friction, right? And that gives birth to what we call cryptocurrencies today. right? And going into many different use cases. I think you point out NFT is a big thing, and I believe many fellow Indian friends have also looked at the technology and also look at things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and different protocols.
Yeah, so that was extremely well put. The way you have spotted the differences between blockchain and crypto, and I'm sure now after listening to our conversation about this particular topic, there would be a lot of people who would have a change in their perspective regarding blockchain and cryptocurrency, right? So I guess it was an important point that we wanted to discuss in our podcast, and it was great knowing all these aspects about cryptocurrencies and again the use cases of crypto, right? So now let's dial back a bit and come to the topic of blockchain security, right? What does blockchain security actually mean, and why it is so important in today's day and age?
There are two ways to look at this topic, actually. One is actually looking at how does blockchain improve cybersecurity, right, as a solution part. The other part is actually looking at what are the potential vulnerabilities or exploits in the blockchain technology itself, right? So these are very two different fundamental perspectives. So maybe I can quickly touch on the two perspectives, right? First is that the blockchain offering a solution to cybersecurity is that when we have traditional cybersecurity, right, you have usually you have one central point of failure. If the hacker is able to access the central database, for example, you get access to all the clients, right? Or if I bring down one single server, I can bring down the entire application, right? Now, blockchain being a very decentralized technology, right? There is no central point of failure, and it's actually difficult to bring down the whole network unless the entire internet is shut down, right? And also, blockchain has this particular characteristics, which is called immutability, right? Which means that transactions on the blockchain technically is not changeable, right? Now, some fundamentalists will argue about that because there were certain hiccups in the past decade of Bitcoin and Ethereum history. But basically, whatever transactions that's posted in a blockchain is there for everybody to see, and is immutable, right? You can't go back and change, right? Not unlike the traditional IT where you can do rollbacks, system recovery, and change certain records, where the system administrator can go in and change certain records. In a blockchain, is supposedly immutable, right? So that offers some very interesting use cases. Like for example, if I'm in India, I have a piece of land, right? But one of the problem with many developing countries is that the land registry maintain paper records or even no records of land titleship. So when people try to get finances from the bank, you don't have any collaterals. Even though you live on the piece of land for generations, you have nothing to show for. So blockchain actually provides this kind of technology where land registry titleship can actually be on a blockchain. It's transparent for everyone to see, and it's actually immutable, right? So this also avoids the case of a corruption where people go in and doctored some records, fake accounts, right? So this is actually one of the way where blockchain provides security for information collection and dissemination. But having said that, as you know, Gavit, blockchain itself is a very new technology, right? Just like any new kid, for those with kids, right? Those parents, you know that kids have tantrums and they have temperaments. Blockchain is a very new technology, and we haven't really fully understood, especially in the area of cybersecurity, right? The way blockchain is coded, um, smart contracts, for example, right, which uses a programming language called Solidity, right? They are actually vulnerabilities and things we are not exposed in Solidity. So during the implementation, there will, in the past 10 years, you can see that there are many hacks and there are many exploits, which we are still learning every day, right? So that is actually two ways of looking at blockchain and cybersecurity.
So, there were some really interesting thoughts shared by you, and especially the immutable part that you have just mentioned. And also, it sort of reduces the risk of human intervention in any transaction, that nobody can edit or alter or delete any kind of data. once the data is there in the blockchain network, it stays there, right? So the security part of blockchain is one of the key aspects of this technology, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. So I guess since we sort of touched upon the security, and and you also mentioned that the technology is still growing, and there is a need to increase the awareness as well, and to address some of the issues that are faced by blockchain, right? So, what are the companies that are exploring blockchain security and trying to adopt blockchain in order to tighten or enhance their data security?
The I would say that the natural audience for this is, of course, the banking and finance sector, right?
Mhm.
The financial institutions definitely would be interested. In fact, they are exploring how they can actually look at blockchain, all right, and also there's there's increasing interest from the traditional investors. It could be hedge funds, it could be
Mhm.
family trust offices. They're actually interested in this new technology, but finding a way where they can invest in cryptocurrencies projects, for example, in a legal, legitimate manner. So this is actually pushing a lot of investment banks to kind of understand this, all right? But cybersecurity is number one because when you deal with billions of dollars, rupees, there's no leeway for you to make an error, right? It could
Mm.
be disastrous to the reputation of the banks. And besides the financial sector, they are also let's talk about supply chain, all right? So
Mhm.
in supply chain, there's actually a lot of counterfeits and these like for example in India, which is a big producer of generic drugs, right? And also there are different pharmaceuticals and drugs. Every year I learned that the fake drugs, actually every year the total market of fake drugs is more than $2 billion, right? And this actually, if somebody has taken it, it could be very harmful, causing
Yeah.
injuries and even death, right? So the purpose of the use case of blockchain is that how can these pharmaceutical companies use blockchain, right, to let consumers purchase the drugs, right, in with a peace of mind and knowing that this is actually a real stuff. One way is actually the whole entire supply chain from production to processing to packaging to
Mhm.
distribution, right? The whole supply chain is actually controlled, right? And each, let's say, a bottle have a QR code where the consumer can scan, and that information is then directed to a blockchain and read the information on the blockchain to confirm that this tablet you're holding in the hand is authentic, right?
Mhm.
And if it's a fake bottle of pills or capsules, right, the blockchain will not recognize it, and then it will say that this is not a real bottle, right? So there are so many different use cases. I think we can talk about the whole day,
Yeah.
right? In
Mhm.
retail, in wholesale, in supply chain, right? Yeah, you name it.
So, so basically, no, essentially, it is like blockchain technology is not just restricted to the financial and the banking sector as many perceive, right? So nowadays we have seen many use cases across different industry sectors, and as you rightly mentioned about the pharmaceutical industry, right? And especially since we have seen the rise of COVID, and we are still dealing from the effects of COVID-19, right? There is a need of adopting blockchain so that this counterfeit drug market can sort of we can put a stop on the counterfeit drugs and bring in more transparency for all the consumers across the globe, right?
Exactly, exactly. I think that's also a case where now in the world we are facing a lot of problems in supply chain. All right,
Mm-hmm.
ports are congested, freight costs are very high. Right, there's a lot of delays. So the problem is that in addressing all these issues, there are actually some new innovations coming up. And a few years ago, IBM and Maersk is actually the world's largest shipping company, right? They have actually collaborated on using blockchain and develop a solution called TradeLens, right?
Mm-hmm.
TradeLens is actually a trade facilitation tool where the shippers or the different stakeholders in the shipment can actually go to the trade lines and see the status, the location of the products, the transaction status. Let's say if I import basmati rice from India, right? I'm in Singapore. I import the basmati rice from India, right? And the 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 vessel is actually on the way in Indian Ocean, right? But in this kind of a trade, sometimes the final consignee or the recipient in the destination is not confirmed until last minute, right? Where the highest bidder will win. And if let's say the shipper, let's say Gavit, you are the shipper in India, and you use a trade finance, let's say a letter of credit or supply invoice financing with a bank, right? And the bank would need to know who is the final recipient and whether it has reached the destination safely, right? Now, in the traditional process, it is very convoluted and very cumbersome because there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of parties involved in one single shipment. But the blockchain aspect of it is that it makes it so transparent to all the parties that you can actually access information real time. And therefore, even when there's a change in, let's say, the status of the shipment or change in the buyer's identity, right? All this information can be disseminated pretty transparent and efficiently on the blockchain, right? So you see, there's so many possibilities even in this COVID-19 situation.
Very true. Indeed, and the way you have sort of explained all these aspects, they were spot on. And now that we have a little understanding about blockchain security, and as we touched upon the security, cyber security, and everything, so let's delve into the topic of the type of cyber attacks, right? Because there are multiple cyber attacks that hackers resort to in order to target organizations across the globe, right? So there are few popular attacks like distributed denial of service, and ransomware is there, and DNS hack is there. So just take us through all the notable hacks or notable the hacks that attackers sort of use in order to target the company.
Yeah, sure. You have mentioned a few, all right. That's actually in the traditional internet architecture, which is built on TCP/IP, transmission control protocol, internet protocol, right? The TCP/IP stack, there are 7 layers, which we call the OSI, right? In the OSI, there are things like level 1, level 2 to level 7. So that still applies, right? Traditional hacking, you can actually do distributed denial of service, DDoS attack, right? By flooding the network. But what blockchain, the new use cases has also opened up new vulnerabilities that is not so well known, right? We mentioned before that in the blockchain, there's something called a smart contract, which is actually a piece of program that runs by itself. Once you deploy it, nobody can actually stop it, not even the developer, all right? Once you deploy the network, all right, the smart contract will run by itself. It can actually check for things like interest rates, right? It can actually check for even weather, right? Stock market indices, the value. And basically, this smart contract is a if or else, right? If then else kind of thing. Okay. If tomorrow the weather in Mumbai is exceed 35 degrees Celsius, right? I will pay Gavit some amount of money, right? Because as a crop insurance, for example, right? So when we deploy smart contracts, one of the things we commonly write in is solidity, right? Especially on Ethereum protocols, we use solidity to write the smart contracts. But solidity is unlike JavaScript or Python, where it's pretty mature. A lot of people are just starting to pick up solidity, right? I think especially after 2016, 2017. Now, as a new language, there are certain flaws. And one of the common flaws is what we call a reentrancy attack, right? That is unlike what we have seen in the past. So what this reentrancy attack deals with is actually in programming, you always have what we call a loop, right? It could be a for loop, a while loop, a repeat until loop, right? So this reentrancy attack actually is a case where I have a smart contract, right? I send a request to another smart contract, right, that maintains a pool of funds, and ask the pool of funds continue to send me, it can be Ethereum tokens, for example, right? Continue to send me Ethereum tokens without stop, all right, until I deplete the entire stock of Ethereum tokens in the smart contract, right? So that is what we call a reentrancy attack, and that actually was what happened in June 2016, right? Ethereum, the DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, the DAO actually did a fundraising. I think they raised more than $152 million, right?
Oh.
But interestingly, during the time, the smart contract, which is actually open source, right, there was it was not aware, right? But I suspect some people actually understand the flaws, but most of the people were not aware of this kind of attack, the way it's coded in the smart contract.
Yeah.
So, in June 2016, actually an attacker, right, who understand the DAO structure and the smart contract very clearly, right? He actually used this attack, right, and drained the DAO, who actually crowdfunded more than 150 million. He actually used this attack and stole 3.6 million Ethereum tokens, right, in a short matter of time. So during that time, Ethereum, that value of the stolen tokens was worth was worth about $60 million, right? But if you look at the price of Ethereum today, you multiply 3.6 million with the price of the Ethereum, which is about 1600, 1700 US dollars. That is worth $6 billion today, right? Yeah. So what happened is that the reentrancy attack recursively draws the Ethereum into his own wallet address. Until today, we actually do not know who is the real attacker, because when you have a blockchain, everybody goes by the wallet address, and your real identity is not known, right? So the problem with the code is that when I keep sending out the funds, right, I do not update the final balance. Okay, so actually it was a very easy fix that before I send any funds out from a pool of funds, right, the smart contract actually should update my balance first, and then I send the fund, right? So that code was actually corrected, and but by then the damage has been done, and there were severe ramifications, right? But what I'd like to highlight also, David, is that actually the blockchain itself, whether it's the Bitcoin protocol or the Ethereum protocol, they are pretty secure, right? But a lot of attacks actually happen at the centralized crypto exchange, right? Or the NFT marketplaces, right? Because these are nodes where there's a large pool of funds, a lot of money inside, right? And it becomes very attractive targets for hackers to go into their system. It could be through phishing, right? It could be through any other methods of getting the private key. And most of the time it's because of human factor, right? We respond to some phishing emails, and then the private key was reviewed. And once the hacker obtain your private key, it's gone. It's as good as he's holding your account now, right? It's just like giving a password of your bank account to a hacker, and anytime he can actually access your funds and deplete your funds until it's zero.
Yeah, so the way you have mentioned about the impact of the cyber attackers, the cyber attacks that are happening across the globe. I guess we need a system in place in order to put a stop on all these attacks and create a atmosphere where we have a high level of reliability, high level of transparency, and then organizations feel safe while getting in a transaction with anyone, right? So I guess we need some kind of system in place, and when we talk about a system in place, we also think about the regulatory aspect of it, right? What are the regulations? Are there any kind of regulations that are being followed, or anything of that sort, right? So we need to, I just wanted to understand about the regulatory aspect of blockchain and how and what the organizations and the blockchain companies are doing in order to streamline the whole process.
Unfortunately, there is no international standard or legislation governing blockchain cryptocurrencies, but a lot of things have happened in the past 2 years. The first one is actually there is a financial action task force, or we call effective, that effectively is a inter-country collaboration, especially between policymakers and central banks, to provide a kind of framework that safeguard the interests of the commoners. So the Financial Action Task Force proposes a slew of measures, like, for example, when you sign up with a cryptocurrency centralized exchange, you need to go through an onboarding process where you put in your personal particulars. All right, there's a process known as electronic Know Your Customer (EKYC), and you have to comply with the crypto exchanges, or the projects have to comply with anti-money laundering. So that is the problem faced by the earlier exchanges where there was no such identification previously, right? And that's the reason why, for example, Binance was closed in a few countries. That's one. The second is that many countries actually refer to the actions of the Securities Commission, Exchange Commission in US, SEC, and that, for example, recently SEC prohibits the use of Tornado Cash. Right. Tornado Cash is actually a decentralized application that allows people to transfer money anonymously, right? Because they go through what we call a tumbler or mixer. And basically, we say that blockchain is a pseudo-anonymous because you can see every transactions on the blockchain, right? It's just that you do not really know who is behind each wallet address. But Tornado Cash and what we call the tumblers and the mixers make it a little bit even more complicated, because whatever transactions that go to a blockchain, let's say money transfer, all right, or crypto transfer, they actually bash a lot of transactions together, right? So it's like a black hole. Things go in, and whatever comes out, you don't really see the actual transaction itself, right? And for that purpose, of course, the SEC bans it. And this also encouraged a lot of other companies and countries to also prohibit the use of Tornado Cash.
Okay. Yep. All right. Quite interesting, all these aspects about the regulations and stuff, because this is something which is really important, right? So if we talk in the future perspective, right, what does the future look like? And what does the regulators and then the institutions, the organizations, and of course the individuals have to do in order to sort of safeguard their data, or the data that they have, and what are the steps that they need to take in the future?
I think there are three areas can be summarized as RAT, right? The regulators, awareness, and technology. Regulators definitely have a part to play. Like, for example, in Singapore, the authorities have actually created a new agency. It's called the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, CSA. And the CSA actually provided a lot of guidelines, recommendations, and even the Cybersecurity Act, right, to put in what are the safeguards, all right, so that people are not scammed of their hard-earned life savings, right? The second, of course, is the financial institutions, right? They have to work on all the different best practices and prevents simple things like phishing scams, for example, that can affect consumers, right? But I think the most important part is actually the individuals, ourselves, right? Because ultimately we are the owner of whatever assets, right? Whether it's crypto or fiat assets, we are the ultimate owners, and we have to know that a lot of things in the crypto world, right, are not regulated, which means that there is no deposit insurance, right? Yeah. So once you lose it, like you put the money in Luna or Celsius, right, and when it goes down, it's down, right? Technically, it's very hard to even trace back the money. So as an individual, we have to improve our awareness. And one particular area is actually on education and capacity building. Just for your information, Digital Nomad Labs saw this shortage of talent pool, right, that knows blockchain and cybersecurity. Respectively, it's really hard to find a talented blockchain developer or a cybersecurity specialist. When you talk about securing a blockchain, it's even more difficult, right? So I'm proud to say that Digital Nomad Labs, we recently partnered with EC Council, right, a US organization that's actually the leader in the space of cybersecurity certifications and lessons, to come up with a program that focuses on blockchain security, right? Exactly the topic that we're discussing today, right? To see what are the new exploits, all right? What are the countermeasures? How can we actually, through such programs, improve the technical proficiency of the developers, the professionals, right? The business managers and leaders, so that they are more aware and prevent um, cases of people where the hard-earned life savings are drained, right? Just in a matter of seconds.
Mhm. The way you put forward all these thoughts and the need of awareness, especially because it is up to the individual as well to be able to understand the whole process and to sort of safeguard his own interest, right? So awareness, I guess, is one of the important factors around around being around safeguarding your own interest, right? So it was lovely knowing all these aspects that we have covered today regarding blockchain security and everything, and how it is quite critical in today's day and age, right? So just to sort of end our podcast, do you have any concluding thoughts or any that you would like to share with our viewers?
Yes, Gavit. Actually, for any people that start to dabble in cryptocurrencies, right, always have a cold wallet, right? You know that a hot wallet that's always attached to the internet is never safe, right? So
Mhm.
do use a cold wallet to store your cryptocurrencies. Um, Maybe my final parting comment is this: uh, if you look at the evolution of blockchain, it's just a teen, right? It started in 2009 with Nakamoto's paper, right? It's just a teenager, right? So I would say that my urge to the regulators is that give it time to
Mhm.
blossom, right? It needs time to be more matured, right? To be safer, more secure, right? And to those individuals and professionals out there, I would say that you are still early in the game because we have not seen the full impact, the full potential of blockchain, right,
Yeah.
in everyday use case. So if you look ahead 20 years later, right, you may think that, oh, I should have gotten in, right, in the blockchain space much earlier, whether it's a business or individual, right? But I
Mhm.
say that you're still early. So I do,
Mhm.
welcome a lot of these professionals, our Indian friends and colleagues over there, right?
Mhm.
Join this blockchain movement. I'm sure it will be a life-changing event for many of us for many years to come.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And just to put things in perspective, you basically want to say that blockchain has the potential to be the next big thing, as many people predict, right? But at present, it is still in its early stages, and there are still sort of many developments that are needed to be done in this particular space, like the scalability issue that we mentioned, that we discussed about, and then the data security aspect, right? And again, of course, the regulatory aspect, right? So once these things are addressed, and the we see, and then we see the transformed version of blockchain in the time to come, then I guess we'll be able to sort of explore this technology in a better way, right? So we know that blockchain has the potential, but at present it's in the early stages. But in the time to come, it will be something that will be the next big thing, right?
Yes, Gavit, I couldn't put it better than the way you put it. Yes, that's a very succinct summary.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it was great talking to you and discussing all these aspects about blockchain. It was a very interesting and insightful session, and I'm sure we'll have many such podcasts in the future on various other topics, and we'll discuss them in detail. Right. So looking forward to all those future podcasts with you. And just to end this, I would like to thank you so much again for joining in and sparing your valuable time for our viewers. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Gavit. All the
Thank
best.
you. All the best. Yeah. Thank you so much. Bye bye.